So what's going on here? What is really going on? What is the big issue here? Why isn't it working right on mobile? So for this, we need to understand a little bit of history. When Steve Jobs and the team at Apple made the first iPhone, they realized they've got this. They're working with the first real touch interface for the internet, and one of the sort of selling points about the first iPhone is that you have an actual real web browser that can go out and look at web pages on the actual real web, not some sort of hampered, cut down, pared back WAP version of the web that we had before on cell phones. And they realized that this CSS hover pseudo class is used a lot. It's used a lot in navigation. You have a drop-down navigation. You hover over the menu item and it drops down a menu. And a lot of these websites are going to break if they don't do something about that. So what they did is they made a tap activate the :hover pseudo class. And it sort of works, but not really, because tapping, you tap and then you hold your finger down and then you take your finger off and you're no longer tapping. But the menu doesn't then just go away. So, it registers that you tapped when you, as a hover, but then it doesn't register an unhover. So they needed to make something kind of work, so they did that, but it's just not great. It's not perfect. And of course, Google came along and copied what Apple had done. And so the Android phones all work pretty much the same way. So the experience is not exactly the same. And really what we need to do is when we're talking about mobile, we need to get rid of the :hover pseudo class thing that we can do in CSS entirely and just do it with JavaScript, or in this case, jQuery. We can do it either way. But by having jQuery handle it, we can handle both the touch event and the hover event separately, and we can detect those two things. So what we need to do first to fix that is, to get ready for this, is to change the two rules so that instead of selected :hover, we're going to do .hover -selected instead here. So that what happens here is we're going to make a class that gets added by JavaScript, so that when you hover over it, it adds the class. When the mouse is over it, it adds the class. When the mouse is off of it, it removes the class. And with tap, we'll do something similar, where when you tap it, it adds the class. And then if you tap it again, it'll remove the class. Or if you tap another one, it'll make sure all the classes are removed. And then it'll be much cleaner. So let's do that next. Go over to the code editor and go back to CSS and find these two rules. It's these two here. And what I want instead of .selected hover is I want .hover -selected. Copy that, and I'm going to change this one down here as well. So I'm not using the hover pseudo class anymore at all. Instead of relying on CSS to handle the hover situation, I'm going to handle that in JavaScript by swapping out these two classes. Next, we can add the basic JavaScript. So I have that on my slide over here. It's this script here. It's also down here on the snippet, so we can just copy and paste this rather than make you type it all out. So I'm just going to copy that and then come over to my index file, and down here at the bottom of the page you can see I have jQuery loaded here, and I'm just going to add my script in here. There we go. And maybe I'll move that in one more space there. Tap. There we go. Save that. So I'm getting selected, and I'm binding both touch start and mouse enter. And you can do this in jQuery, where you can actually bind two events, touch start and mouse enter. And then I'm running a function, I'm passing in the event object. And then I check to see if the event type is mouse enter, so this chunk of code will handle if I'm using a mouse and on a desktop, or if I'm not using a mouse on a desktop, then I must be using touch start, and the else will fire and handle that stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about what this is doing in here in the next video.